Okay, so here is the part two. These are my NFC predictions for this year. So I'm going to start off with the NFC East. Now, I think this is the Eagles and Cowboys division. I really think they are just a league ahead of the rest. Now, I think the Giants and Washington both have premise for future teams, but I just think, as we all can almost agree, that right now they're just pretty messed up. Now, I did have Philly at number one, though. Now, a lot of this is because, Carson Wentz did a whole lot with a whole lot of nothing last year. He went 9-7. No wide receiver, had over 500 receiving yards outside of his tight ends. But still, that's insane. So they're really trying to help get him that consistency at wide receiver. They got a Marquise Goodwin, and they got Jalen Reagor, who I know was a kind of controversial pick, but he's a huge guy, should be able to catch some passes and hopefully help them win games. And not to mention the additions of Darius Slay, who's a lockdown corner, and Nickel Roby-Coleman. And also, Parks, but he's not as good. But still, they're really bolstering that secondary. And I think a lot of this is going to be the reason they go up to 11-5. I think they gave themselves talent. I think they're a contender in the NFC this season. So then the Cowboys, the poor Cowboys. I only have them at 10-6, and it's just because they're the Cowboys. I don't know. They have a whole lot of new coming in and a whole lot of old. They lost Byron Jones and Jeff Heath, two guys who've been starters for a long time. Jeff Heath more on the special team side, but still, that's a huge part of football. And then they lost Travis Frederick, Xavier Su'a-Filo, O-line, which they've kind of been known for. So losing them wasn't big. It was big. Excuse me. And so I'm just not all that sold. And obviously Jason Witten, who is like the most consistent person in football. So they just lost a lot. And sure, they got guys like Everson Griffin and Aldon Smith for that edge rush, help to try to find that guy to put beside DeMarcus Lawrence. But Gerald McCoy, they signed and then lost. And then Dontari Poe has not been his former Falcon self when he was an all-pro talent. So I'm just not sold on them as a great team. I think they're going to get better. They did also Greg Zerloin and HaHa. So I think they have, just small signings like that I think are going to be huge for them. So I do think they have a winning record, but I just think they're going to get kicked out the first round of the playoffs probably. Going into the Giants, I love the Giants. They're my NFC favorite team, but I just can't put them higher than 6-10 because I'm a little concerned at what's going on. They have a great core with Danny Dimes and Saquon, but I just don't know how much better they are than that. I think having a year under their belts, I think Danny Dimes is going to play better this year, along with, I think Saquon even will. I think he's really starting to get a flow and a feel for the offense. And I loved the early round pick of Andrew Thomas. I know a lot of people weren't huge on him, but he's a huge physical tackle that'll hopefully help in the run game and the pass game for both Danny and Saquon. And Xavier McKinney, another draft pick I was huge on. I thought they did really good in the early rounds at getting as much talent as possible. And also Blake Martinez is a tackle machine, and that was something they'd struggled with ever since B.J. Goodson had just regressed to the point of a not good player. So I think, again, they're going to be better this year. Not great. In a few years, maybe they'll be fantastic. But right now, yeah, I'll put them at 6-10. Washington football team. Just because, as if things weren't crazy enough, the ownership's minority owners are trying to pull out. Everyone's pointing fingers at Dan Snyder. They changed their name, but they haven't changed their name. Their head coach just got diagnosed with cancer, sadly. Everything that can go wrong in an organization in the upper part is basically going wrong for them, and I just don't think they're going to be able to bounce back from that. And so, sure, did they get talent? Yeah, Chase Young looks like he's going to be one of the best prospects out of the draft, but, how much can he do on his own? Now, okay, I'll always give the one thing. Washington has always had a good defense. They have De'Aaron Payne. They also have Landon Collins. So they have tons of talent on defense, but their offense has just stunk the past few years. Alex Smith, that's a great story, though. Maybe they can sell that story. They'll win a few more games than I thought, but I just think that right now they're a mess up top. So I could talk about talent all day long, but I don't think it's going to do anything as long as their organization is just an absolute mess. So yeah, 3-13, maybe even less. That may be generous. So then we go into the NFC West. Okay, now this one, I think a lot of people are going to, disagree, but I'll just hear me out, okay? Niners at 11-5, and I know a lot of people are like, oh, how can you do that? And I think a lot of that is because, one, they lost Matt Breida, who's a big part of the rushing attack, so Jimmy G's going to have to create more. And they also lost to Thornton Buckner. And I know they got Javon Kinlaw, okay, and a lot of people think he's going to replace him, but still, DeForest Buckner was proven. Javon Kinlaw has to prove himself. So that's a big change. So they're going to struggle early, I bet, and do good at the end, just like they did this year. And I think people are starting to figure out Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, look at him in the Super Bowl in the second half. They needed him to make one or two big throws, and he missed them all. I'm not sold on Jimmy G. I think he's the most overpaid quarterback in the league right now, and I really think he is the only thing holding them back because, man, that defense is just unbelievable. I mean, they make good O-lines just look like children. It's unbelievable. So that's why I'm at 11-5 at the end of the day. Is I think teams are starting to figure out what they do, and they lost one of their running backs, which I think is a huge loss, and people just really didn't talk about it. And I know near the end of the year, Robert Mostert started to take a lot of that, but the carries from Breida, but still, he's a great running back, so losing him is not a thing to wince at. And they lost Emmanuel Sanders and Marquise Goodwin, who both are wide receivers, so again, just more inconsistencies in the passing game, which already is struggling. I just don't think that's a good look for them. Seahawks at 11-5, going down win totals, down from 12-4 last season. Again, I think people are really gonna, butt heads with me on this one. But man, I mean, you can't lose that much in such a weird offseason and then expect to just get pieces back and it all to work. I mean, they lost 4 offensive linemen, 3 defensive linemen, 2 safeties. So much went out, and sure, a ton came in too. I mean, like getting guys like Bruce Irvin, who's a good veteran, Carlos Hyde, Greg Olsen, and Jamal Adams, and Quentin Dunbar for the most part. But again, you have so much old going out and so much new coming in a weird offseason. And don't get me wrong, Pete Carroll's a good head coach, so if anyone could do it, maybe an experienced head coach like him could. I'm still just not sold on the fact that they're going to be this great team, though. And also, what I've always said about Russell Wilson is, I mean, he has not proven himself on his own. When he had Legion of Boom, he, didn't have to win games. He just had to do just enough. And now that he has to win games on his own, he can't. And I think that's really just a testament to that. He's not he's not this top tier quarterback yet in my eyes until he wins that big game, on a team where he's the centerpiece. He was not the centerpiece on any of those teams that went to the Super Bowl before. And so now he's really struggled on his own. And I think he's really got to prove himself, and I just don't think, from what I've seen of him, that he's going to overcome all this year. So yeah, I put him at 11-5, tied for San Fran. Then Arizona, who I think is the most overrated team in the NFL right now. I'm hearing so much about how people think they're just going to explode this year, and I just don't get that. I really don't. I mean, I gave them 2 more wins than last year, sure. I mean, they're starting to figure things out with their head coach, but I'm never huge on small quarterbacks. I mean, you just heard me talk about Russell Wilson. I just think it's you have to play a whole different style of system. And don't get me wrong, Cliff tries to do that with Kyler. They play, super spread vertical offense where he has tons of options to run or throw. So then they traded for DeAndre, and it's like, okay, he's not necessarily a verticals wide receiver, in my opinion, okay? He can. I think he can. The great receivers can adapt, but, I mean, he's great at just, you throw the ball near me, I'll catch it. But, the Texans used him a lot more in shorter routes. He's not Tyreek Hill burning you over top every play. He's kind of slower. So to pick him, I was a little confused by that. I mean, I think they still won the trade, but I don't know. I wasn't huge on it. And also, losing David Johnson wasn't huge to them, so they did win in that regard. They kind of just dumped him off, and so they don't have to worry about him anymore. They also got Jordan Phillips from the Bills, who I loved, had a breakout season last year. I think he's really going to help that Arizona defense that was inconsistent as all get out. And Isaiah Simmons, because what can he do? The dude, look at his snaps from college. It's unbelievable. He played literally every position on defense except nose tackle. It's unreal. He's a freak of nature. But again, I just don't think they did enough and try to change. And their biggest problem was O-line, and I just did not see huge O-line changes. And so again, I put them 2 more wins, but no more than that. So then we go to the Rams. I don't know. I just kind of feel bad because the money's killing them. They're being killed by the cap. I mean, they signed way too many people. They tried to build on Jared Goff's rookie deal, and then they just signed Jared Goff. They lost a ton of talent. I mean, they literally lost 3 linebackers this year, and 2 of which were starters, and 1 was a good reserves in Corey Littleton, Dante Fowler, and Clay Matthews. They lost them all because they just don't have money to sign people. They also lost Brandon Cooks and Todd Gurley. I mean, now don't get me wrong, Todd Gurley, that was a little bit of a different scenario, but still, I mean, he was their starting running back who helped carry them to a Super Bowl. And Brandon Cooks, and again, a number 1 receiver on that team. And what they got, they got guys like Cam Akers, who I think a lot of people are poising for a breakout season as a rookie, and Van Jefferson, again, which was kind of a weird one, but they're trying to replace players, but I just think, I don't know, I mean, they lost so many starters and solid players. I just think their team's going to kind of be in shambles. I think Jared Goff's going to have a huge season. I think their offense will click, but outside of Aaron Donald, I'm just not too big on the defense anymore, and they lost Wade Phillips too. So it's like I just think they're going to muddle out at a 6-10 and lose some wins from last year. So then we go into the NFC North. This one, again, I think there's tons of debate in this division over Green Bay or Minnesota, who owns the division. But I making this list, literally, I had Minnesota at first until I just, I couldn't count Rodgers out because, I mean, if you want to see a guy who's playing pissed off, I got to imagine they draft a quarterback in your first round. Sure, he's being like really good mentor to Jordan Love, like they say, but man, he's got to want to play out of his mind. He wants to make that decision as hard as possible for them to drop him and stick with Jordan Love or to go to him. And so I really think he's going to play out of his mind. So the team may have not gotten really great around him, and he did lose a lot of talent, but I still think that he's going to overcome it. Obviously their 2 biggest losses were Bulaga and Blake Martinez, who are both starters and really good, but I think they can overcome it. And I mean, they also gave A.J. Dillon, so they bolstered the backfield, so maybe he won't even have to really play that great. Maybe the backfield with him and Jones will carry that team. I don't 100% know, but I just think he is going to be a man possessed this year. Kind of like that year when they ran the table, that whole campaign they did when they started losing every single game basically, and then they won like 8 straight to make the playoffs. I just think he's going to be a man possessed this season, I think. So then to Minnesota, which, again, I put them at more wins than last year because I think they got better. But the problem is any other year, I would have had them winning the division. But this weird year, I can't because their whole thing was they drafted like 14 rookies. And again, I've talked about this so much in these 2 videos. This is the one offseason you don't want new. You want as much to stay the same as possible. Now, it would have been one thing if they signed a player, who had played with their head coach and their team before. But no, these are all rookies. And not to mention, they lost 2 guys on their dominant D-line in Everson Griffith and Linval Joseph. And again, like I said, they drafted very well, I think. And they also got Michael Pierce from the Ravens, who I think was a great signing. But again, you lose so much, and then you bring in a ton of new. This is the one season that doesn't work. Other seasons, you would have had a way more extensive rookie mini camp, and training camp would have been a lot more big a deal. But it just isn't right now because of COVID. So I think COVID is the Vikings' worst enemy right now. No one in their division, but I think drafting 14 rookies is bold. And obviously they didn't know COVID was going to keep going on this long, but still, I think that's the biggest reason. That's the biggest thing holding the Vikes back is the COVID. So the Detroit Lions were ones I struggled with, but I ultimately put them at 7-9 because I think they're taking the right strides. And we all forget how good Matt Stafford is. The dude can throw the football so well when he's healthy. And also Jeff Okudah, who was one of my first-round favorite players. The dude at college at Ohio State was just dominant. No penalties on top of being a shutdown corner. People just didn't throw at him. That's unbelievable. Then you throw in DeAndre Swift, who a lot of people think dropped. Great running back out of Georgia, who I think didn't get enough attention. I think all the running backs this year didn't get enough attention. Him, Dobbins, and Taylor. But I think a huge part of that was, just the running game isn't really appreciated, but it can help so much. So many teams rely on it to really succeed. And so I love that. And then, everyone jokes about how they're the mini Patriots. I think they are. They picked up Danny Shelton this year and Jamie Collins, who both great players. And sure, are they Patriots players? Yeah, but I think they're going to fit Patricia's scheme, the defense he's run for years and years and years, and I think they're going to finally win games. Now, I do think eventually Matt Patricia will get fired, but I think this year is going to be a kind of weird year where the Lions fans finally get hope, and then next year they'll win 4 games, and then they'll be all sad again, but that's Detroit. The Bears, to me, are just an absolute mess. you bring in a guy last year who was paid $88 million just an offseason ago by the Jaguars, and then does absolutely nothing when they try and play him. I mean, has one good game and then just bums it out. And then you have at one point in the offseason 8 tight ends on your roster. I mean, that just doesn't sound like they know what they're doing. On defense, they don't have to worry about it. I mean, Khalil Mack, Eddie Jackson, Kyle Fuller. The names on their defense go on and on and on and on. But, man, their offense is just a mess, and they don't even know what to do. They needed more wide receivers, and the only two they got, or the only one that was notable was Ted Ginn, and he's like 38. They just don't have much direction on offense. I think their offense is going to mull out, and they're going to just lose a lot of football games. I don't know. It's almost frustrating because they could have been something so much more, but I think they're just letting Double Doink, make them as a franchise. Is this just failure in the 21st century? It's disappointing to say the least, but yeah, I have them winning 5 games, and honestly, that may be generous. They may win 3 and just absolutely collapse as an organization. So here in the NFC South, I struggled with a little bit, but I'm okay with my end game for what I put with this. So for New Orleans, I have them going 11-5, and I know that's a loss and it's going down in wins, but again, I just think losing Bridgewater and now knowing Breeze is basically going to have to play the whole season is just kind of concerning because I don't know. I love Breeze. I think he's one of the greatest ever, but he's just getting older. And his arm's getting weaker. I mean, every season come playoff time, he's missing throws he wouldn't make. Or even come week 16, week 15. So I don't know. I want them to do good. I want him to have like one last chance. But, I mean, they choke in the playoffs every year, and he only seems to get worse the later into the season they go. So I think 11-15, they'll be pretty dominant in the regular season, and then they're just going to fall off. Now, Tampa, I have at 10-6, which honestly, I almost put them at 9-7. Because I know everyone's talking about, they have Brady. They have Brady. Brady's run the same offense for like 20 years. So you're telling me at 42 years old, he has to go into a new offense, relearn the whole thing, and it's Arians' offense. And Bruce Arians' offense is known for being difficult, and then he's just supposed to dominate? I don't know. I'm just not big on it. And then they lost DeMar Dotson. And sure, they got Tristan Wirfs in his place, who I think is better. But again, new is hard this year. And everyone's like, but they gave Brady Gronk. Yeah, but they already had O.J. Howard, who's younger and I think has Gronk he retired for a reason, okay? Like, I know people are like, you retired early. He can't stay on the field. He literally cannot. He struggles so much with injuries, and people just forget that when they're talking about him as the greatest tight end ever. A big part of tight end is just playing games, being reliable, being that check down valve that every team has. And he just struggles to provide that because of his injuries. So I think people are like, oh man, he's been out of football for a few years. Still, though, he has so much wear on his body at such a young age that I just think, I don't know. I'm just not huge on them. I think their offense is going to muddle out mid-year or like struggle through the first half, and then they'll kick it on near the end. But I don't even know if they'll make the playoffs, honestly. I think they're going to be like a fringe team. They'll be a wild card, and Brady's awful in the wild card. I mean, notoriously bad in the wild card. So I don't know. At 10-6, maybe even generous. I'm just being honest. So then we go to the Falcons. The Falcons, I like the Falcons, but I couldn't put them at any higher. I think the Todd Gurley signing was huge because if he is healthy, they got him for an absolute bargain. But losing Hooper and getting Hurst, Hooper was proven, Hurst is unproven. So again, I'm going to go back to the same thing I've said a million times. This is the worst offseason to have new things happen. And I think they're a great example of that. I think their offense is going to kind of struggle. And they also lost Vic Beasley, Desmond Trufant, and Adrian Claiborne, all guys who were starters on their defense. So I just think, I don't know, Dan Quinn will probably get fired this year. And they're going to have another 7-9 season. I don't know. Atlanta's in a weird spot where I don't know. They're like trying to figure out if Matt Ryan's still the future or if they need to move on. So they're trying to give him all these weapons, but it may be him. I mean, he's great in the regular season, but I don't know. I'm just 7-9. I was pretty happy with that. Then going on to Carolina, 6-10. And a lot of people are going to be kind of upset because a lot of people are really excited for them. But again, they added so many people in the offseason. They only drafted defensive players, okay? So their defense, which was their worst thing last year, now has a whole bunch of new people who are going to try to be starters in a year where everything is shorter. They have less time to prepare. I just don't see how that works. A new head coach, there's too much new. Give them 3 years. I think they're going to be a top tier team. But right now, they are a bottom of the division, just kind of, hey, we're here, we're trying to get better, but we just don't know. And I think that's what they're going to be. I think Matt Rule wasn't really good at signing, though, I will be honest. And I think their draft was really good, too. But again, it's the worst year to have all this new happen. And they had almost all new you that you physically could happen. From quarterback to every position, basically, but running back. So, yeah. All right, well, that's the video. It's not as long as the last one. Sorry about the last one being so long, but yeah, I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you next time.